Welcome to today's broadcast of Beautiful Life. We are so happy that you can join us today. We are going to have a wonderful, wonderful time interviewing our special guest that's with us today. As many of you know that tune into the broadcast, here at Kathy Bichsel Ministries and Beautiful Life TV, we love showcasing the stories of God's glory transforming the lives of people. If you have a relationship with God that doesn't cause personal transformation, then you really aren't experiencing the true fulfillment of what being a Christian is. You're basically just religious. I love how the gospel changes people's lives, and we have with us today Anthony DiGregorio. Anthony, we welcome you to the Beautiful Life program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
I'm glad you're here too. We've already had an opportunity to chat a bit and just catch up on some things. I actually had the opportunity to meet Anthony through FITS, and those of you that are out there asking, and what would FITS be? No, it is not major bodily movements. It is, FITS is Faith International Training School, an outreach, I don't know if you would call it an outreach, but a very unique outreach ministry to the nations out of Faith Fellowship World Outreach Center in Sayreville, New Jersey. It is the brainchild of the senior apostolic leader there, Pastor David Demola, who calls himself pastor, but we all know he's an apostle.
Yes.
And it's just a unique vision where the church body itself brings in maybe between, it's grown now to I guess like 40 or so students,
yeah,
and from around the globe. And the congregation for 6 months pays for room and board and their education, and they get trained in a 6-month intense. That's the word, Anthony. Thank you. Very intense. Yeah. Very intense program. And I am privileged to serve there on occasion to teach in the school, and that's where I came across Anthony in one of my classes on how to hear the voice of God, and his life and his passion for Jesus so impacted me that as we were preparing for this month's guest, I just readily thought of him. Anthony, you have, in doing the prep work of your story, one of the reasons that I really wanted you on the broadcast is, we need to know that Jesus Christ cares about us. People need to know that he cares about us, that he loves us, and that he is deeply moved by the painful issues in our lives or personal suffering and loss and brokenness. And your story highlights the power, the true power of Jesus Christ to heal someone bound with addiction. And as we go through these next broadcasts with Anthony's story, if you are someone that has an addiction in your life, some kind of compulsive behavior that is bringing destruction in your life, then we want this program to minister to you. In your case, your addictions grew.
Yeah.
It started, interestingly, with, from what I understand, it started with a visit to the dentist, right? Just tell us a little bit about that first encounter with the drugs.
Okay. So I was 21 years old. I got my wisdom teeth pulled, went to the dentist, and he prescribed 12 Percocets. And
which is not unusual.
No,
I know
it's
when
normal.
anybody gets surgery these days, that's what, right?
And when I took them, it did something to me. I loved it. I mean, I thought it was the best feeling in the world. At that time, I drank alcohol and maybe smoked some pot occasionally, but I've never done hard drugs or anything like that. But at that point, when I took a Percocet, it did something to me. I loved it, and I wanted more. I wanted more, so I found a way.
How did you find a way to, which intrigues me? There's a couple things that interest me, how it just took that one, when you hear the testimonies of people that, that the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yes.
There's a scripture that I was thinking about out of John chapter 10, where Jesus said, I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be liberated, will go in and go out and will find pastures. And then Jesus said, the thief, we know he's talking about the devil.
Yes.
He approaches with malicious intent, looking to steal, slaughter, destroy. But I have come to give life with joy and abundance.
Yes.
How in your case it was just a Percocet. I was reading or knew of a story several years ago of a major ministry leader who the enemy came to steal from him through pornography. And how it started was someone dumped a trash can at the end of his driveway, and it was filled with pornographic books. Yeah. And it was the other trash in there, but he went to the end of the drive. His wife said, go bring in the, go take out the rest of the garbage. And a book fell on the ground, and he just picked it up and brought it in the house, did not realize what it was. It was that one book. Yeah. But when we look at the Word of God, Jesus said that the devil is a liar and he's a murderer. Yeah. And that word murderer is the word that means manslayer. And so we need to be aware of how easily, how malicious, as great as God is, as good and gracious and loving that God is, we have an adversary, and we need to be aware. People need to be aware of how easy it is for the enemy to come in and get us going down on a road, because he wants to destroy our destiny.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, we'll be right back in one moment so that we can get into all the details of Anthony's story.
Throughout time, God has always reserved for himself a remnant, a people fully sold out to his message and willing to pay the price of radical discipleship. While the church and the world lie in crises, a message is sounding once again throughout the corridors of time, that God can alter the course of history through a radical few. Consider Moses, the Apostle Paul, Daniel, Noah, Abraham, and Peter, just to name a few sold-out radicals to God's calling. Don't settle for the confines of the ordinary when the Father has set his love on you to be extraordinary. Rise up out of the ashes of loss and disappointment and take hold of the one who makes all things new. Join us on an adventure of faith to experience Christianity the way it is supposed to be. Radical, the radical rising remnant. The latest book from Kathy Bichsel. Get your copy now at kathybichsel.com.
So we're back here with Anthony DiGregorio. Anthony, so you got hooked on the Percocet, and so I'm just going to give you the next several minutes to just go ahead and tell the story, because it's really, I don't like to highlight, all the bad stuff the enemy does, but we don't really truly understand the depths of God's grace until we know the depths that we're coming out of, right?
Exactly.
So go ahead and share with us.
So when I was about 21, I started with the Percocet, and after the prescription was
boring by then, right?
Finished, I made it my mission to find where I can get it on the street. And through a connection of my job, I found someone who was able to get a lot of them. So I was always buying them. I'd buy several of them and take them myself, and then sell them to other people to make more money to feed my addiction. Before long, it started where it felt good and it was a recreational thing. Then my mind started making up excuses every single day to take them. Oh, I'm tired today, so let me take a Percocet. And Percocet didn't make me tired and lackadaisical.
Right.
It actually did the opposite. It made me on fire, made me hyper. It gave me more energy at my job. So I started hearing the lies that I couldn't perform unless I was on Percocet, high intense catering business and stuff like that. So I took more and more and more. Before I knew it, I was taking at least 20 to 30 a day. I was so physically addicted that when I would wake up in the morning, I was in such pain because the withdrawals would start that I had to take a handful of them just to get out of bed.
Wow.
And and then I would start feeling normal and go about my day. It wasn't even so much getting high anymore. It was about feeling normal just to get through my day, just to so I wasn't.
And you
sick.
were very high functioning. I mean,
Yes.
according to your story, I was really taken back, which is an unusual story for people that are that work in, I know people that are in the financial industry that have addiction issues, even in the medical, the medical field that have addictions and are very high performing. You would never guess.
Yeah, it actually, I was convinced I was better at my job when I did them. It wasn't an option for me not to work. So I always went to work. I was on time. I was a manager. I was in the catering business. Then I became a mortgage broker.
And then that's where, from what I understand, that when you got into that, that's what really was fascinated me, that in that industry was where you really started to, the decline really accelerated.
Yeah, the addiction just went to a totally new level. I was a party animal, whether, when I first, my lower 20s, I loved to party and go out all the time, but when I became a mortgage broker, it actually just went to the next level.
How old were you when you became a broker?
26.
Okay.
26 years old, and there were so many parties. There was, we would have to take realtors out to just network and attorneys and accountants, just to network and get your name out there, get the company out there to get referrals and
they
clients.
would all party?
So taking them out, half of them would party too.
Wow.
So it was, and your bosses, your managers would actually encourage you to go out and do drugs and have all night cocaine and all different types of things.
Okay, I have been way too sheltered raising my children in my little suburban home.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of this happens in suburbia too, though. I mean, that's where you were living. You weren't living in, in the hood somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, this, and I think this is so important for our audience to know, is that somehow we have a stereotypical image and a false one of someone that is addicted, and we think it's just somebody that's a homeless person or someone that's on the streets or grew up on the wrong side of the tracks or is in poverty or whatever. But the reality of it is, there's the down and outers, but there's the up and outers that are equally addicted. Yeah.
I grew up. My mother and father raised me wonderfully,
Oh, tell us a little bit about that too.
Christian parents. I grew up going to church on Sundays. They loved the Lord, and they taught me about the Lord young. I always believed in God, but I never applied it to my life. I never had a desire. Once I got to high school, everything else was more important. Partying, girls, sports, everything was more important.
Wow.
So I just totally got distracted, and I pursued things of this world instead of Jesus.
Wow. And that's a testimony too to how your parents really persevered in prayer for you, evidently. They were pivotal. I mean, how was their response while you were in this place?
They loved me. They never pushed me away, but I know they were disappointed in my life. Even if I was successful, making money, did well at my job, it didn't matter. They knew that I was bound by addiction.
It was the one thing in your life. I know as a mother, of children, that the most important, you can't take material things with you to heaven, right? You can't take the jobs and the houses and, or all the accruements of, I guess, a job and working hard. But your family is so important. I can only imagine what it must have been like for them. Now, do you have a sibling? I
have an older sister.
And were they? Did they have? No, right. So
total opposite.
She's Mother Teresa, right?
Yeah,
she was Mother Teresa, so it probably was harder for your parents.
It was.
Yeah.
We were total opposites. She stayed home. She didn't party a lot.
Well, God was good to your parents.
Yeah. And then I was the total opposite.
Right. Wow. That's fascinating. Well, when we come back with Anthony, I want to talk about, now that we're starting to get the picture of the degree to which the drugs were affecting his life, we're going to talk more about how, what began to happen to him, how kind of low it got, but really what his ascension out of the pit began to look like, and how the love of God just met him where he was at, and that transformation process began. We'll be right back.
In this 3-part audio series, you will find scripture meditations for divine life, health, and wealth. As the scriptures are brought to life with the accompaniment of instrumental sounds, you will be encouraged by the power of God's spoken word. Meditations for divine life will set you free from that old life of sin, fear, addictions, and depression, releasing you into a life filled with righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Spirit. Meditations for Divine Health gives you a daily dose of God's medicine and fills you in on all your benefits. Meditations for Divine Wealth edifies you to be like the patriarch Isaac, who, while meditating, looked up and saw his camels coming, which was God's provision. This set will elevate your faith to the forefront in calling these areas in your life as though they are. Visit KathyBichsel.com to purchase your choice of either a CD or an MP3 download. That's KathyBichsel.com. KathyBichsel.com.
We're back here again with our special guest, Anthony DiGregorio. So Anthony, just continue your story telling us now how, now I know you had become a mortgage broker and got into a whole nother level, but unfortunately there was a higher level still of, of your addiction.
Yes. So as I kept growing and doing more drugs and whatnot, I also went to the gym. And I got very involved with working out. I became a bodybuilder. I became obsessed with working out and lifting weights and getting bigger.
Right.
And I started taking steroids on top of everything.
Wow.
And so I remember I was pretty consistently drinking almost every night.
So what was your whole cocktail? What did the steroids replace the other drugs, or did you take them additionally, or
it was just additional. I mean, I would go out partying and drinking, and the pill. I would take pills all day long at work,
so it was,
just to get through the day.
Wow.
I would go to the gym after work and go home and then party all night, sometimes till 3, 4 in the morning. Sometimes never come home, and then go back to work at 7 in the morning, do it all over again. How I found the energy was just I'm not sure.
Well, yeah.
All of the drugs.
Yeah.
And then as I just kept taking steroids, and it was expensive. So I always looked for a way to make money. And so I found a connection in Asia to get a raw compound of the steroids, and I started.
You were a diligent boy.
Yeah.
Boy, you just channel that energy into
Yeah.
the good side. You're amazing.
So I found, so I actually made a chemistry lab in my kitchen,
Wow.
and started creating injectable steroids in my kitchen. I figured out how to do it, and I would, for myself, but also I would sell it and make a lot of money doing it.
Wow, I bet.
And it just got out of control. I was taking way too much. When I first started taking steroids, I would go to the doctor and monitor my body, make sure my blood pressure was right, and cholesterol, all that stuff. And then I just got totally out of control, and I really neglected my body, and started developing some symptoms.
Wow.
And I started getting severe shortness of breath, pains in my side, like severe pains. I couldn't even walk 20 feet without gasping for air after a while.
Now, were you also at this time doing heroin or anything as well, or no? Just the
pills.
Right.
I did pills. I tried heroin, but twice because heroin's an opiate, and so is the painkillers.
Right, yeah.
And but I was able to always have painkillers, so I never went to the heroin. Thank God.
Now, at this point, were you still? How were you? Were you still functioning at work? Did you?
I was functioning at work. There were times where I would be a little tired and stuff like that.
Were you ever afraid? Did you ever were you on such a delusional high, for lack of a better word, that you never really grasped reality? Or was there ever a time in this process that you were afraid? Or my second question would be that maybe the voice of your parents started coming in your head, knowing, if something happened to you, that what was your relationship with God like?
There was no relationship with God at all for several years. When I've discovered when you are under demonic influence and bound by addiction and you're always high, All
Right.
rational thinking goes out the window.
Wow, wow.
So you asked, do you get a little bit concerned or afraid of what's going on with your body? There are glimpses and times where you start wondering, okay, am I healthy? But then it just gets totally masked, and you just don't care, and you just push forward and keep going on in that direction.
Wow.
And it's a shame, it really is.
So is that more or less that lack of rational thinking? Was there any kind of intervention that your parents tried, or your sister, or clearly somebody in your life was seeing this downward spiral? Is it just that kind of stronghold that, you see all these, TV shows? I think there's one reality show on intervention, whether it's any kind of addiction, on how difficult it is to actually intervene.
Yeah.
Was that, talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, first, they didn't know anywhere near to the extent it was at, how bad it was.
Right.
I was
So you
a
were
liar.
hiding it, right?
Yeah,
right.
I was a liar. I was good at hiding things, and that towards the end they knew that I was addicted, but they didn't know to the extent. They didn't know about the steroids. They might have assumed it because I started getting very big.
Right.
But they didn't know exactly what was going on. They started intervening at the end, like maybe you should get some help with
Right.
what's going on.
So tell me how, as we close out today's program, to kind of get us ready for our next broadcast,
Yeah.
because clearly this story is so powerful. We wanted to give 2 episodes of the broadcast to Anthony so that we could hear this episode we've kind of see the chronology of his downward spiral. We want to really start to see how things had progressed to such a point, even for you physically, that it was a setup for you to really come to your senses
Yeah.
and reality.
As time, it didn't, I didn't come to my senses until I hit rock bottom.
Right.
It wasn't like,
And what did that look like is what I want to know. So that, what was it the breakdown of your body?
Yeah.
Was it?
so I started, like I said before, I started having severe shortness of breath, pain in my side, and, not knowing what was going on. And what brought me to, the end was basically collapsing in my kitchen one day.
Wow.
In the worst pain I've ever had in my life, screaming on the top of my lungs on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I had to be rushed to the hospital. So that
Right.
was my bottom.
Right.
And when the doctors told me that my liver was failing, my kidneys were failing,
Jeez.
and they don't know why and what's causing it, it woke me up and saying, what did I do and how did I get here?
And how old were you at this point?
31.
31 years old. Wow. And what was the report that the doctors gave you on your heart?
They didn't know right away what was causing my liver to fail. They knew that my enzymes were very, very in the thousands, which is way too high. They didn't realize what was going on, so it took 12 hours for them to realize that, okay, let's give him an echocardiogram and see what's wrong with his heart.
Right.
And when they did that, they were astonished at what they saw in the results. My heart was almost 3 inches too large, and it was only working at 8% efficiency.
Wow.
And they said usually people don't live under 10%. They couldn't understand that I was working 3 days before that. I was in the gym a few days before that as well.
Wow.
And only less than 10%
You were
of
alive by the grace of God.
Yeah, God's hand was in it before I even
Knew it. He was
seeked
keeping
Him.
you,
Yeah,
right.
And because I should have been dead.
Right.
They told my parents that first day. First of all, they had to rush me from Red Bank Riverview Hospital to Newark Beth Israel because they weren't geared to deal with such severe heart failure. When I got there, they told my parents that I probably won't make it through the night.
That must have been an unbelievable experience. I certainly hope that you can join us again for our next broadcast of Beautiful Life, where we will finish hearing Anthony's story and the dramatic deliverance and rescue that he had out of this lifestyle of pain and addiction, how Jesus Christ radically transformed his life. So please tune in next time for Beautiful Life.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of Beautiful Life and the teaching ministry of Kathy Bichsel. For more information about Kathy, her books, downloads, and CDs, please visit beautifullifetv.com. If you are interested in Kathy's teaching schedule, Or perhaps you would like her to speak at a church or event near you. Please email info@beautifullifetv.com. We would like to thank you for taking the time to join us, as we trust that God's blessing will continue to offer you His beautiful life. So long for now.